December 9th of 2007 started like any normal Sunday. My three sisters, my parents, and I headed down to church in Colorado Springs, Colorado, from our home in Denver. We sat in church and listened to the worship service. We listened to the guest speaker, and after church, we had our weekly argument about where we would go to eat. As we were leaving church, we got into our minivan. The unthinkable happened. So I heard a loud pop to my right, and I turned, thinking that a balloon had popped. And chaos erupted as my dad screamed at us to get down because someone was shooting at us. In the next 2 minutes, my twin sister lay dead on the seat in front of me. My sister Rachel, who had been standing outside the car, turned blue on the asphalt. My dad had jumped out to help her and was non-critically wounded a few feet away. About 10 hours later in the hospital, my sister Rachel also passed away from too much blood. My dad survived after a lengthy surgery, and my mom, my younger sister Grace, and myself were forever changed. These are my sisters right here. Somewhere in the chaos of gunfire, I had had the stunning thought, I'm going to need counseling after this. I truly credit that strange thought for where I am today. That thought had come to me from something that I had experienced about 4 years earlier. As a teenager, I was 14 at the time, and I had asked a friend of mine for her notes to her intro to psychology class. My interest in psychology prompted my interest in counseling, and it also led around to, I was kind of the counselor for my friends. I had an online social group of friends where we would talk about how we felt unseen by those around us, especially our parents, and we all struggled with different things: depression, anxiety, self-harm, eating disorders. And I tried to do for them what my parents had not been able to that point to do for me, to see them and to truly be with them. But at that point, I was a wounded healer in the sense that the emphasis was on wounded. I was listening in order to try and get some kind of healing for myself. And yet, that was what brought me back to that thought at the moment that my sisters were being murdered. I'm going to need counseling after this. Now, the first round of counseling that I went through did not correct the dynamic of trying to soothe my own pain through helping others. The first round of counseling was honestly just stabilizing after such a traumatizing event. It wasn't until the second round of counseling that I went through 2 years later that I began to truly understand what it meant in some ways to heal myself first. So 2 years later, I had found myself in a dying marriage. I had married my high school sweetheart only to discover that he had a rampant addiction to pornography. At that moment, I was in the deepest depression I had been in my life. My sisters had been murdered. And as a good Christian girl, I could only think that God was punishing me. And that it was at that moment that I stepped out and asked for help. Rather than trying to rescue other people, I finally reached out and started rescuing myself. Through that round of counseling, I became empowered, and I realized that I could make my own decisions. I had agency and I had choice. It was something that had never occurred to me growing up, and at the age of 22 was a new thought. And as I discovered that I had choice and I had agency, I made the choice to step away from my marriage. And my divorce was the catalyst for the greatest healing I have yet experienced. It was through my divorce that I realized my own empowerment, that I could be my own person. I chose to walk away from Christianity. I found my own spirituality. I began meditating. I began doing yoga. I also started a round of EMDR therapy. So EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It bilaterally stimulates each side of your brain and replaces harmful beliefs with skillful ones. When I had gone into EMDR, To be frank, I had not dealt with the trauma of my sister's deaths. I had been distracted by my marriage to a pornography addict and had not addressed it. So I had an array of trauma symptoms, hyperarousal, star response, flashbacks, the normal sort of PTSD. And EMDR is a specific therapy that is usually used for trauma survivors. So I did a year and a half of EMDR, and when I came out, almost all of my triggers were gone. So at that moment, I was a believer in healing, and I thought to myself, how can I start bringing what I've just experienced to other people? So I accepted an offer to graduate school, and I was all set and ready to go when I had a moment of crisis. I was 25 at the time, and I had wanted to be a counselor since I was 15. I had just gone through an enormous life change, and I was a completely different person than I had been. Was this still really what I wanted to do? And furthermore, had I healed enough to become a therapist? So I turned down my acceptance to graduate school, and at that point felt really lost and bewildered, having lost my kind of purpose in life. When a friend emailed me that fall, she said, I think you should do this yoga teacher training. And this is really weird for me, but when I read that email, I knew immediately, I have to do this. And so I did. And when I entered that yoga teacher training, I thought that I had done a deep level of healing, but this took me to the next level. You see, it wasn't any normal yoga teacher training that I did. This yoga teacher training, my teacher, Jessica Patterson, taught me that in order to be a yoga teacher, we have to be present for what's in the room. People bring a lot into yoga classes, and it turns out also that yoga is not just asana, with the physical practice. It's about learning to be present. And so in doing this yoga teacher training, she asked us to become first present to ourselves, which meant becoming present to all the things that kept us from being present, and taught me that this is the necessary vehicle for healing. When we become present to ourselves and to everything that keeps us from that presence, we are then able to be present with others. And it was this that spurred me back towards graduate school. I had a practice where I finally, through yoga, began to be present, both to my own pain and to the pain of those around me. And I think that is absolutely the core of what it means to be a wounded healer. So often you see most healers are wounded, truly. And so often you see them trying to soothe their own pain through healing others. And when we do that, we run the risk of forcing other people into our own pain narrative rather than empowering them to heal themselves. So the process of healing is actually about showing up, really, for real, showing up, being present to yourself, and allowing that presence to invite others to show up. So I want to invite you all to show up tonight with me. To do that, I'd like you to bring your feet flat to the floor, and maybe settle your hands in your lap in a comfortable position. And either close your eyes or bring them softly to the floor in front of you. And just start to notice the floor underneath your feet, and maybe the seat underneath you. And notice your breath. And then just take a moment to think of a person, place, or being with whom you feel absolutely safe or unconditionally loved. I often use my cat, so whatever works. And just notice how that feels in your body. You might notice some warmth in your chest. You might notice a sense of expansion in your stomach. Maybe your shoulders drop a little bit. And just know that at any point in time, whether tonight or in your outside lives, when you're not feeling present, you can come back to this moment. And as you're ready, just open your eyes. So tonight, here's my invitation to you as healers, as I think we truly all are. The invitation is to show up, to be present, first for your own pain, and then for the pain of others. We need you. Thank you.
Thank you.